Hey guys, tonight we slip into a world thick with mist, where the air smells of wet earth and the gods are watching. You're standing at the edge of a jade-colored jungle, the sky bruised with swirling clouds, and your bare feet sink into soft, damp soil as thunder growls like a hungry jaguar. There's a strange pressure in the air, like the world itself is holding its breath. Everyone you know is side-eyeing the heavens more than usual. You don't know it yet, but you're whole. Reality is about to get washed clean. And not in the refreshing, rain-on-a-hot-day kind of way. We're talking temples toppling, kingdoms drowning, and your calendar being rewritten from scratch. You probably won't survive this, but it'll be the most incredible bedtime story. You ever hear so? Before you get comfortable? Take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is right now. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake before dawn. Again, that's the third time this moon. Frogs in the swamp haven't stopped screeching for days, and the birds are quiet to quiet. Your mother keeps glancing at the sky with narrowed eyes, and the priest, who usually smells like burnt copal, has started fasting without telling anyone. Why does something is off? The rivers are swollen, even though the rainy season shouldn't begin. For another 2 months, fields are already half mushy, and maize roots are drowning in puddles that don't go away. The old folks call it a T-zone. A confused season when the sky forgets how it's supposed to behave. You trudge to the central plaza for the morning offering. But even the fire pit looks uncertain. Smoke curls sideways like it's too shy. To rise, the high priest's chant stumbles. And then, a crack of lightning dry. Lightning slashes across a cloudless patch of sky. Everyone flinches. Even the stone jaguar statue by the temple seems to wince. No one says the word flood, not yet. That would be too real. But the elders speak in hushed tones about stories told to them when they were children of a time when the waters rose up and swallowed whole cities, when at Samna, the sky god, wept for humanity and sent down the heavens to rinse the world of arrogance. You remember one version, where humans were turned into fish just to survive. Another where the flood came because people forgot to thank the gods for chocolate. Honestly, that one feels more believable. A few nights later, during what was supposed to be a quiet lunar ceremony, the sky completely loses it. The stars vanish, just like that Poufiton by some invisible cloak. Not even Venus, the morning star, peeks through. And when the temple musicians beat their drums to chase away the bad omens, the rhythm sounds flat, hollow, like they're drumming underwater already. The king calls an emergency gathering. Not that you're allowed into that part of the palace, but word leaks out fast like everything else these days. The priest astronomers bring out their bark paper codices frowning. At glyphs painted generations ago, they argue softly, hands fluttering like birds over calculations made with coral beads and obsidian sticks. One of them points up. Another shakes his head. A third swears he saw a double rainbow over the cenote at dawn. Not a good omen. Rainbows are sacred, sure, but too? That means something's ruptured? Historians still argue whether these flood myths stem from literal events, like tropical superstorms or rising sea levels, or were moral allegories meant to keep people humble. But to you, standing barefoot in sticky mud while the wind smells like salt and thunder, it doesn't feel like metaphor. It feels like something's coming, something huge. The royal astrologers finally break their silence and announce a sky. Imbalance, too much moisture in the upper realms, they say. Not enough fire. The heavens are bloated, heavy, and what is heavy must fall. So the temples begin prepping. Young maidens are purified in sacred cenotes. Statues are anointed with honey and blood. Crocodile is paraded through the plaza to represent the watery underworld, Shabalba. He looks unimpressed. The king makes offerings with obsidian knives, and you swear the birds stop flying, every single one. And then 3 days later begins first. Rains like the gods tipped a lake upside down. Thunder roars without. Lightning. The wind smells wrong, earthy, metallic, thick. You try to sleep, but the thatch above your head leaks like a sieve. By morning, the outer fields are a lagoon. By nightfall, the roads vanish. No one leaves their home unless they want to swim through snakes and floating bundles of maize stalks. A fringe legend you heard once, whispered by an old trader passing through, bubbles up in your mind, that the world is built on the back of a giant turtle, and sometimes when it stretches, whole continents shift. But you scoffed then. You're not laughing now. The next morning, the priesthood unveils an ancient drum sealed in clay and only meant to be used when the sky breaks. It's carved from ceiba wood and painted with serpent glyphs. You feel the sound before you. Hear it like the pulse of something deep beneath the earth waking up. You don't know it yet, but this is just the prelude. The flood hasn't hit full force. Not yet, but it's coming, slipping through cracks, trickling over thresholds. Rising behind your back like a whisper that turns into a scream, you look to the horizon and see something shimmering like a wave. Trying to remember how to stand upright, and behind you, the temple drums beat faster. It starts, oddly enough, with silence. You wake to it, no frogs, no insects, not even the rustle of palm leaves in the wind. Just the eerie hush of a world waiting for impact. Your hut feels like a boat, though you're still on land. The air is damp and motionless. Your mat is soggy beneath you. When you step outside, the village path has become a shallow stream, winding lazily between flooded cooking fires and half-submerged baskets of manioc. But then, far in the distance, you hear it, a low, thunderous growl. Not from the sky, this time, but from the earth. A deep, grinding rumble, like stone against stone, and then a sharp crack, not a branch, not lightning, something deeper, something final. You glance toward the horizon, and there it is, a wall. Of water, not a wave, not quite. It doesn't crest or crash like the ocean does. It just rises taller than the tallest ceiba, wide enough to blot out the sun. Not moving fast. It's somehow worse. It's moving like it knows it doesn't. Have to hurry, and it's coming straight for you. You run. Everyone runs. But this isn't just a storm surge. It's the gods flipping the board and scattering the pieces. Within minutes, the outer homes vanish under the tide. Clay walls melt, thatch roofs float away like lily pads, and those beautiful maize fields your family has tended for 3 generations, gone. Eels now patrol where the squash once bloomed. You scramble up a hill, clinging to tree roots slick with rain and mud. Children scream. Chickens fly. Somewhere, someone tries to chant, but their words are swallowed by the roar. You reach the higher ground and turn back just in time to see the edge of the royal plaza sink beneath the waterline. Pyramid, your kingdom's pride, stands strong for a breath longer than buckles. A great slab of stone falls like a dropped mask. Even the gods, it seems, can't hold their breath forever. What follows is chaos. The loud kind, but the aching, soggy aftermath. Days pass in a floating blur. You perch on a fallen tree with a dozen others drifting between drowned homes and upside-down canoes. Sacred jaguar swims by, utterly confused, fur slick to its bones. A priest with red-painted lips floats face down past you. It's a ceremonial cloak trailing behind like kelp. You cling tighter. The water isn't just high, it's everywhere. The rivers have forgotten where their banks are. Cenotes swell like boiling. Pots, underground caves collapse, swallowing entire courtyards and temples. A nearby volcano, dormant for centuries, begins to belch steam, as if even the mountains are stressed out by this mess. Historians still argue whether this flood was one colossal event or a series of smaller catastrophes stitched together by oral memory. Some suggest a massive El Niño cycle. Others think it was the result of deforestation disrupting the water cycle. But to you, clinging to driftwood and wondering how many snakes can survive in a mango tree, it feels like punishment. Like the gods got tired of your calendars and sacrifices and cacao parties and decided it was time for a good old-fashioned rinse. Eventually, the rain slows, but the water doesn't leave. It sits heavy, stagnant, unmoving. You paddle to what used to be your school. A lone corner of the roof still pokes out, and someone has tied a bird cage to a tin side. A parrot sings a song it learned from a drunk merchant. You're too tired to laugh. More days pass. Food becomes a game of chance. You catch frogs. Dig roots from underwater fields. Someone figures out how to trap fish between temple steps. Someone else brews storm tea from herbs found floating in a broken canoe. One boy eats a glowing mushroom and spends 3 days speaking in riddles. He's now considered a prophet. People change. The nobility stop demanding things. The priests stop pretending they know what's happening. Everyone from palace cooks to cenote divers is now just wet and hungry and trying not to die.
Right.
You share roasted snails with someone you used to ignore. A girl who once wore jaguar hide sandals now has fungal growth between her toes, and she doesn't even care. No one does. The water has made everyone soft around the edges. You finally sleep on a mat that isn't wet, a gift from a traveler passing through who claims her village never flooded at all because it's protected by a cave with a mouth shaped like a serpent. You almost believe her. In the distance, you spot a canoe, 3 men in feathered cloaks, paddling with grim determination. They don't stop to talk. They're heading to what's left of the coastal cities, hoping to find answers in coral temples and tide-worn glyphs. You envy their clarity, even if it smells a little like desperation. One morning, a priest who survived the temple collapse gathers the remaining villagers, stands ankle-deep in the water, and unrolls a soggy bark scroll. The glyphs are almost gone, but he recites from memory the story of the last flood. The one that came when the gods grew bored of wooden people and washed them, a way to make way for flesh and blood humans. Maybe we're the wooden ones, someone whispers. Maybe this is our rinse cycle, and let's hope we don't. Splinter, you mutter back. That night, you lie awake watching the moon reflect off the floodwaters. It looks fractured, shimmering like a broken mirror. You wonder if the sky will ever feel solid again. You wonder if you will. And then you hear the drums, faint, distant, coming from the next ridge. Not the panic drums from before. Not the temple alarms. These are different, steady, measured, like someone starting over. At first, the drums sound like a mistake. They echo through the trees just as your dreams begin to soften. But their real someone is still playing, still counting time, still marking days, even when calendars have drowned. You rise from your mat, which now rests on drier earth. The water has begun to recede. Not vanish, no. It still clings to the lowlands like a bad song, but pull back enough to show soggy earth and the bones of old paths. You follow the sound, over the hill. Just past the ruin of the old temple gate, you find them, a loose group of survivors from another village, building something that's either a shrine or a soup pot. It's hard to tell. They're from further inland, where the flood came not as a wave, but as a long, slow seep. Their chief is a barefoot woman, with a hawk feather braided through her hair. She speaks calmly. It's like someone who's already lost everything twice and doesn't intend to lose anything else. You help them rebuild. It's not out of nobility. It's just boredom and survival instinct. Everyone does, stone by stone. Reed by reed, the Mayan world begins to crawl back from the mud. Nobles whose palaces sank are now thatching roofs with commoners. Farmers share soaked seed bundles. Astronomers, displaced from observatories that now sit underwater, sketch the stars from scratch, comparing memories. No one argues. No one claims divine right. Not yet. It's unsettling. You visit the crocodile pit one day. What's left of it? 3 sacred crocodiles survive by floating in the rain-swollen moat, lazily feeding on fish trapped in the ritual channels. A boy named Kayat makes offerings to them, now flowers, insects, even a flute carved from driftwood. One crocodile blinks slowly and lets the flute rest on its snout for a full minute. He approves, Kayat says. Music is better than blood. You nod. You don't know if he's joking. Historians still argue how much of this post-flood cooperation was voluntary. Some believe the elites cleverly rebranded themselves as chosen survivors, spinning new myths to justify their continued leadership. Others suggest survival blurred the lines of power so completely that new traditions arose from necessity, not ideology. You wading through waist-deep marshes to gather wet maize, don't care which version ends up in the codices. You just want dry feet still. Something is shifting. You feel it in the way people now mark time, not in months or moon cycles, but in meals shared, tools bartered, roofs fixed. Even the stories change. Children gather at night around cooking fires, not to hear the old tales of conquest and glory, but to whisper about glowing frogs that warned their villages, or dreams in which the drowned ancestors speak from beneath the waters. One night, an old woman tells of the bat god Kamazotes, who flew across the sky before the flood began, his wings blotting stars. He wasn't a warning, she says. He was a witness, watching to see who would swim and who would sink. You glance up, half expecting to see leathery wings stretched across the moon. But the sky is clear now, clean even. You haven't seen stars this sharp in years. Still no one rebuilds the pyramid. Oh! The bases, their stone blocks, still peek from the mud like the teeth of a giant, but no one dares stack them. It's not fear, it's reverence. Quiet admission that maybe the pyramid had its time and now the world needs something else, so they build circles instead. Gathering spaces without hierarchy where people chant and share and argue about the shape of the future. The astronomers draw new charts, this time with more emphasis on water, flood stars, rain omens. The moon is no longer just a calendar marker, a memory, a symbol of rising tides and retreating certainty. One evening, a wandering merchant arrives. He carries obsidian tools, clay beads, and a story that stuns everyone into silence. He speaks of a city further inland, spared the worst of the flood, where the rulers declared themselves children of the sky reborn. They wear blue robes. Now, not red. They claim their bloodlines survived because their ancestors swallowed stars before birth. They're building a new temple not for the old gods, for the ones who sent the flood as a test. You don't like the sound of it, too. Clean. Too clever. Still, part of you wonders if it's true. Survival always demands a story. You remember the first days after the flood? When the mud caked your ankles and the air smelled like rotten think, maybe believing you were chosen is the only way to make sense of staying alive. But your village does things differently, quietly. You don't name yourselves Sky Children. You name yourselves Itzalkayakal, the mouths of the water, not because you speak for the gods, but because the water nearly swallowed you whole, and you spoke back. The boy Kayat plays his flute for the crocodiles again. This time, they swim in a circle, chasing one another like children. The people take it as a sign. Crocodiles, after all, were ancient guardians of the underworld. If they're playing, maybe the balance has returned. Your new chief, the hawk-feathered woman, announces a feast. The first real one since the flood. Fish, maize, roasted peppers, and a drink that tastes like fermented hope. You eat until your stomach aches and your hands are stained with spices. Later that night, as you lie beside a reed fire, someone whispers, "Do you think the flood will come again?" You say nothing, but you do wonder, because even as the stars shine and the jungle sings again, the ground still feels soft beneath your feet. And every low rumble of thunder makes your pulse stutter, but the drums continue. Even now, not panic, not warning, just rhythm. A heartbeat shared between those who survived, and those who remember. The days stretch longer now, and the jungle feels calmer, but not entirely healed. You walk trails that didn't exist before the flood carved new ones, or perhaps revealed old ones smothered by time. Your sandals squish through damp moss, and every stone you step over seems to hum with leftover memory. The trees themselves lean differently, like they've been reminded of their place by water, more ancient than roots. The calendar keepers are arguing again. You hear them from the communal circle, their voices a soft storm of feathers and frustration. Ever since the flood, the old SoCon calendar feels ... wrong. Not useless, just out of step. The rhythms it once tracked no longer align with the sunrises or harvests or tides. One scribe, a man missing 3 fingers and half a smile, swears that Venus has shifted her place in the sky. Another, a teenage girl with ink-stained teeth, claims she dreamed a new glyph that measures the time between disasters. You're not entirely sure they're joking. Historians still debate. Whether a new calendar cycle did begin in this period one that reset the Bactan count after the flood, or at least symbolically broke with the previous long count system. Theories suggest whole dynasties were erased from memory in order to mark a cleansing of time. Others argue the Maya simply adjusted existing cycles, absorbing the flood into their cosmic story like a particularly angry comma. But you see, something deeper. The flood didn't just wash away cities, it drowned certainty. And in the vacuum left behind, a different kind of time emerged. Less linear, less king-focused, more intimate. People begin marking days not by the lives of rulers, but by shared events. The night the jaguars returned, the day the maize sprouted. From the buried pot, the morning three suns rose together in the mist. Real? Not always. But real enough to remember. You help carve a new sled. It's not for a king. It's for a village. Flat, round, no blood gutters. It's just a single, coiled snake biting its own tail, surrounded by symbols of water, fire, stars. In breath, at the center an open eye. What does it mean? Someone asks. You shrug, that we're still looking? The astronomers meet at dusk now, on a dry hill where the stars seem to crowd closer. They've abandoned their ornate observatory masks and instead wear simple paint across their face, is white dots for stars, dark bands for eclipses. Their tools are simpler too. Shadow sticks, water mirrors, bowls filled with sand and stones. And yet they see more. They talk about patterns repeating, about how the flood is not an end but a return. They say the gods have cycles, not moods. Perhaps one of them whispers during a particularly red sunset. We've just entered a new era not because the gods changed their minds, but because we finally paid attention. You start noticing things you never did before, like how the frogs chirp 3 times before rain, or how certain birds avoid the southern sky on specific nights, or how children born since the flood all seem to stare a little too long at water. One baby, named Ixtun, never cries unless the moon is full.
Right. Her mother says she's part fish. Her uncle says she's part prophecy.
Her grandmother just shrugs and dips her in a bucket. When she gets fussy, you suppose all 3 can be true. Then comes the eclipse, a total one. You've seen partial eclipses before, sure, but this one is different. The whole sky darkens like a closing eye, the birds go silent. Even the wind holds its breath. The village gathers in silence. No drums, no chants. Just hundreds of wide-eyed faces staring upward. As the sun vanishes, someone calls out, not in fear, but reverence. A single word, Canum. Suffering, but not as punishment. As transformation, when the light returns, everyone looks reborn, not in the baptized, glowing kind of way, more like shaken, stripped down, open. A few days later, the scribes unveiled a new calendar glyph, a spiral crossed by a serpent, framed by waves. They call it not attune the deep season, a time that doesn't belong to rulers or war or tribute, just to water, to waiting, to memory. The elders vote to observe the first festival of the flood. Da-da-da-da. But instead of honoring destruction, it honors balance. Crocodile dances, moon chants, offerings of clean water poured into thirsty soil. No blood, not even a single prick. You join the dance. Mostly because you're curious, partly because your feet start moving before your mind catches up. A fringe belief emerges around this time that the flood wasn't natural, wasn't punishment, wasn't even sent by gods. It was a message. From the earth itself, a breathing conscious world resetting its rhythm. A few elders scoff. So now we worship mud. One jokes. But you notice they still pour their cacao carefully into the cracks in the floor afterward. You start having dreams not of drowning, not anymore, but of standing waist deep in clear water, holding a torch that doesn't go out. Around you, voices whisper names. Some you recognize, some you don't. One voice says your own name backward. Another just hums the rhythm of the old drums. You wake up not afraid, but certain that the world is different, not just changed, rewritten that night. The stars burn especially bright, and for the first time, The scribe with the ink-stained teeth smiles without showing the stain. The next day, she gives you a new glyph to carve. It's shaped like a spiral cracking open, she calls it. Sicken Keowilth the dreambird's lightning. You don't ask what it means. You just carve. Because some things aren't meant to be explained, only remembered. The morning fog feels thicker, now sweet, with the smell of damp stones and crushed leaves. You step carefully around puddles that never seem to dry, each one a perfect mirror of the gray sky. Somewhere nearby a monkey shrieks, but even it sounds softer, as if the jungle has learned to whisper. You're on pilgrimage today, not alone. It's not exactly, but not in a crowd either. Just a quiet trail of feet, weaving through twisted roots and sunken terraces. You pass carved steps where once thriving cities stood, their temples half consumed by vines and silence. Here the flood never quite left, simply paused. Some call this region the wet spine, a sliver of high jungle where everything seems to sag under the weight of memory. The old gods were angry here, or maybe just misunderstood. One cracked stele shows a deity vomiting rivers. Another shows humans trying to fish the stars out of the sky. Both are etched with perfect seriousness. You pause at a sunken plaza, now known as the Rounding Mouth. No one knows what it was called before. A few mossy stones remain, perhaps once the base of a market or a ball court. But now it's just a shallow bowl, half filled with rainwater and the bones of unidentifiable animals. Once a year, someone leaves a feather here. Just one. No one touches it. No one claims it. The stories echo more loudly in places like this. One tale says the flood was started by a jaguar who drank the moon and vomited it back up as waves. Another claims the gods flooded the world because humans had grown to quiet, not praying, not dancing, just living like rocks. So the gods decided to wash the noise back in. A third, darker version, one you only hear around late fires, tells of a sky stone that struck the earth, cracking open a sacred cave and pouring the stars into the sea. The elders scoff. Just thunder myth. But again, you notice they sleep closer to the cave's mouth now. Just in case, archaeologists still argue over a mysterious layer of silt found across multiple Mayan ruins. Dating roughly to the same time, was it truly the result of a flood? Or simply centuries of decay and runoff? Some push the idea of a massive hurricane. Others lean toward cosmic catastrophe, meteor, comet, an angry Venus. And still, others insist the flood never physically happened. That it was metaphor, a reset of story, not soil. But you stand ankle-deep in stagnant water, staring at a staircase that leads to nothing but sky, and you think, does it matter? Because here's the thing. People still remember, not just in ruins and glyphs, but in the way they live, and how homes are built higher now, with woven reed floors that float if they must, and how children are taught to count raindrops before they learn numbers. And how every village, no matter how far inland, still keeps one canoe just in case. You visit a cave called Chenha, Mouth of Water. Inside, a shrine has been set with candles made from river fat. The walls drip, constantly forming little rivulets that join into a hidden pool. If you toss in a piece of maize, it either floats or sinks. Float means yes. Sink means wait. You try it. It sinks, so you wait. While you wait, you trace carvings, some old, some new. Flood lines marked year by year. Symbols for protection, for memory, for laughter. One shows a smiling turtle with a pyramid on its back. Another shows a woman holding a cup of rainwater in each hand, balancing perfectly. And then you spot it, tucked in a corner, half hidden by moss. A small, recent carving. The spiral cracked open. The dream bird's lightning. You smile, not because it means something profound, but because someone else remembered. At dusk, you reach the edge of the drowned city. It's the last leg of your journey. It's not a city now, just a forest punctuated by geometry. Mossy steps, tilted platforms. One broken stela still stands, split. Down the middle, like a snapped bone, you place your hand on it. It's warm. Not from the sun, there hasn't been any for hours, but from the stone itself. A lizard watches you from a carved jaguar mouth. Its eye flickers once, then it vanishes. You sit and breathe. You remember the old river that used to run beside your childhood home, the way it hissed when it flooded, the way your mother said it remembered too much. You remember your grandfather's warnings? Never trust still water. That's where the gods hide. You remember the first time you dreamed of drowning? How you woke up not afraid but clean? You remember, and you let the memory settle. It's like silt in a sacred basin, because now you know. The flood wasn't just a disaster. It was a teacher. It showed you where the ground was weak, which roots held, which stories mattered enough to swim, and how even when everything falls apart, its calendars, certainties, you can still wade forward, even if the path is mud, even if the sky might fall again. You'll be ready. You've carved the glyphs, you've danced the spiral, you've seen the dream bird fly, and still you wait, not for safety, not for gods, but for the next story, the next crack in the sky, the next spiral to open. And now, with the floodwaters behind you and only starlight ahead, you let your breath slow, in and out, a little deeper each time. The air smells like wet leaves and old stories, the kind of air that feels heavy, but not in a way that burdens in, a way that comforts, like a thick blanket or a low song. You imagine the water receding, gently now, like it's bowing its way back to the sea. Trees rise, roots stretch, and stone paths reemerge from their temporary sleep. The jungle doesn't rush. It exhales, just like you. Patient, steady. The temples don't call for glory anymore, they just rest, letting moss and time do their quiet work. You're not a king, you're not a scribe, you're just someone listening. That's enough. You. Close your eyes, and in the darkness behind your eyelids, you see it, the spiral. Not spinning fast, just unfolding, slowly, eternally. And you're in it, gently drifting. No need to paddle, no fear of sinking. The sky hasn't fallen tonight, it's just wrapping you in silence. Let the stories swirl, like silt in the water. Let your heartbeat match the rhythm of a river you once knew. And when you finally sleep, let it be deep and still and just a little bit ancient. Good night, dreamer.